All right,
They
so
just
let's
have to be in
move on.
sync.
You know, I think Chris has a story for us about money laundering. No, we're moving on. We're moving on.
Well, in regards to the money laundering, I think that the position that I was reading this article recently about money laundering, and it really goes into like where are things headed right now, and I think it's really this. There's this whole concept around that it still has this negative connotation. I think that there's still it's either now it's not so much the dark web and internet and drugs so much, but it is now potentially scams and unregulated securities. So like people just keep peeling things back and looking at the negative side of things as opposed to how people are trying to help build and disrupt and change things for the better, right? And so, you know, Canada is in the process of coming up with their own set of regulations, which I think is great. I don't know what that's going to be exactly yet, but I'm sure that they're taking into consideration many of the same things that the U.S. has been and what the SEC is saying about how securities are pretty much rampant and there's not really a utility token that they've seen so far, so to speak. Not to say that they're all bad, right? I think there's plenty of great projects out there, and I think that there's a lot of people who are going to be, and I've heard this starting at the end of last year, that this year will be the year of the security token, right? That people will follow traditional regulation. They'll get a Reg D or even do like a Reg A plus and raise $25 or $50 million through normal channels, and instead of giving a stock, they'll give a token, right?
Do you think that's actually something that's going to take place and that it's going to be legally feasible?
I think so. I mean, like Delaware's already been doing, like building that bridge.
Well, Delaware's like the capital of everything there.
Right. I mean, they're doing it, right? So you have these other companies like Polymath and T0 who are leading the charge on building the actual platforms to list these tokens on. And I think right now everybody is playing in this field without a manual, right?
Right.
They're just like, okay, well, this is what
We want to do.
This is what we want to do, and we're going to try to map it out to be as safe as possible, or we're just going to go for it, right?
Well,
There's two philosophies.
Do you think it's going to happen first in the U.S. or? I mean, it probably, because it is a competitive environment, right? I think, does Europe have like one SEC or what are the real like competitions? Like I think China has its own stock market. The U.S. has what are the different hubs of regulation, like the competitive regulatory environments, basically?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know what the European Union has as far as like.
It's not a per country basis, right? It's probably like a whole EU-wide thing.
I should know this, but I don't off the top of my head.
But how many? I mean, because I think the whole world there isn't really that much competition in terms of regulatory like pockets. Like I think like China can do something crazy and the U.S. can't touch it, and the U.S. can do something and China can't touch it. But besides, I don't know, no one cares about Mexico's stock exchange. So.
Well, Australia has their own stock exchange. The New Zealand stock exchange is kind of like the market setter because they're the first one to open for the day. Right?
That's weird.
And then
that's luck.
Japan has always been an economic like hub.
They're separate. Their regulatory thing is separate.
Oh, totally. Yeah. South Korea, same thing.
Oh, South Korea might be a big thing.
Well, South Korea is like on their own, like they're marching on their own path right now regarding like the stringency to which they're holding companies who are trying to release ICOs and limiting people to be able to even buy into these token platforms.
But then there's also some of them like because of the politics of the countries having good relations, they want to the regulation rules seem to sort of overflow into the other to sort of influence it really. Like China can really do whatever it wants and doesn't really care if the U.S. gets mad. But I think someone like South Korea or Japan, which have much closer ties to the U.S., might go along with if the U.S. really wants something.
I think what we're looking at really is this whole idea of when we talked about the Wild West before, right? There is really not a better analogy. I mean, people are just kind of doing whatever they're doing, and they're getting in trouble afterwards. and there's not really a reason to have to get yourself in trouble if you follow pretty much the rules that have been set forth. It makes it difficult. I get it.
How difficult does it make it? Is this something that's really like can the small guy,
No.
it's just a team of 5 people, they're worth $500,000, can they do it?
You can do it, but not in the U.S.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you would have it, okay, at least if they did it in the U.S., then that would kind of give a little bit more assurance to investors, since it would be an actual security, that there would be some sort of recourse if the proverbial, hit the fan.
I think that's what this whole thing boils down to is consumer protection.
Right.
Right. It is such a small piece of the overall like financial picture of crypto right now. Under what is it, 600 billion or 800 billion?
Crypto is like under 4.
Is it all total right now?
No, yeah, it's under 4.
I stopped looking at price a while because when it started going down, I was like, I'm not going to
now
look
it's up
for
a
a
little.
while.
Now it's down a little. Yeah, it fluctuates.
But it's relatively small, right?
Right.
On a big picture, and I think what they're afraid of is the next wave that goes from when Bitcoin goes from 10K to 40K, and then comes back down to 20, right? And how many other people are going to get pulled in, and how many other people are going to feel like they got screwed, and how many more people are going to complain then. So they got to are you proactive in your penalizing and making examples of people now so that you have less trouble down the road, or is it so small that you're just going to have to keep smacking people around until the whole world wakes up to how to behave, right? Because we were, I don't think we're getting really into the John Oliver thing.
No,
Not yet.
But part of in that video they basically talked about Ponzi schemes and straight up pyramids, right? These companies are basically telling people pump and dumps are cool, and they're promoting it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's that is obviously illegal.
Yeah.
However, it's not really in the crypto space because there's nobody enforcing it. I don't know, or there's nobody looking at it. Doesn't mean it's right, right? And you just get people who are trying.
Okay?
The money is the driver, and unfortunately, it's going to corrupt people's good intentions, and it's going to cloud all of the good work that's going on.
Right. Do you think that by creating a framework that actually does regulate, let's say, securities or cryptocurrency like tokens as securities, do you think having it almost might be a good thing? Because if there's not much regulation and people are everywhere say, oh, this is not a security, or they're not treating it like one, you actually have a framework where there is, like you said, consumer protection. In truth, that actually kind of gives companies a choice, right? Which route do they want to take? So in that sense, it could actually be a good thing for companies, because if they do want maybe to create their tokens in a framework that has more accountability, there's most likely going to be quite a bit more demand, I would think, unless you think those regulations would also be a reason that the token would not, they would have some restrictions that could keep the company issuing the tokens from actually doing well, from prospering, right? Because regulations they do kind of tie your hands in certain areas.
Mm-hmm. One question I have, though, real quick, is are any brokerages looking at sort of interoperating with this? I know we have sort of the crypto world trying to interoperate with stocks, but I don't see. Well, I guess Robinhood a bit, but that's not really the same thing.
I believe NASDAQ had a pilot test that they were doing over a year ago.
But it's very rudimentary, right?
Yeah. There's nothing's live right now. But to your question, I think what we're looking at is, yes, there's people that want to play by the rules, and there's always going to be people who don't.
Right.
And the fact that there are not really any rules established at all means the people who are trying to do good and are basically left out in the dark. I mean, they're basically stranded. And so everybody is doing something different, right? This is part of the reason why I supported the idea of the ULC's Virtual Currency Business Act, right? Because there needs to be some sort of uniform definitions and basic template law that people can understand, and just so that they know when they're talking about multi-sig, that it doesn't necessarily mean that company is a custodian if they use multi-sig. We need to focus on the fact that like this is an ever-changing industry, and that we can't just lock ourselves into one way until we mature. Just like you couldn't stifle innovation around the internet,
right?
You can't do the same thing here, or you'll see it just blossom in other places. And maybe that's just what needs to happen. Maybe this is a slap in the face to wake up the United States and say, you are falling behind. You're already lower down the tier in the STEM category, right? So like, if you also want to fall behind financially, where you've always used your military like power to maintain your financial like enterprise and superiority over the world, that might not last much longer unless you take a different stance and embrace and help build innovation, or let it foster, as opposed to over-regulating it to a point where you've actually handcuffed people while you were attempting to protect them.
Yeah, so you think it's kind of difficult to tell whether it would be something that would actually help increase prosperity within cryptocurrency in the United States, or if it were one that would drive off, how would I say it, drive away business, right? It probably depends on the details, right?
I think that's what they're probably dealing with and having conversations behind closed doors right now, is how do they balance that? It's a tightrope that they're walking, and you don't want to slip off.
I think the sentiment overall, though, in the U.S. is pretty positive, though. You work with that a bit more, right? But
it's really hard to say what the sentiment is. I mean, you get
sentiment among whom?
You get people who are
I'm sure it's mixed, but
pro crypto and pro blockchain technology in government,
right?
But most of them honestly don't know like
anything about it.
They still don't understand. And like even the people who are voting on ULC, the Uniform Law Commissions, and have representatives from every state who help determine this, what we didn't want to see is another bit license, right? We already saw Washington State come out with like their version of a bit license, which crippled some businesses, and they had to leave or shut down. What you didn't want is 50 states having 50 different like cryptocurrency type of regulation or laws on the books where none of them matched, and then people were just like, well, screw it, we're just going to leave altogether because, one, it's already too difficult to raise money. Two, now we don't even know, like, we have to have 50 different like licenses. We have it was just a mess. It was going to turn into a mess.
Do you think that the current administration right now in the White House, do you think that that's a positive thing? I mean, I think there was quite a bit of news on cutting regulations and stuff like that, but I don't know if that has any implication for that.
I honestly, I mean, I've heard that the current administration
do you think it would be different if
favor?
Obama was still here around, or
no? I really don't.
You think it would be the same?
I think there'd be the same conversation. I think that these are committee level decisions, and the multiple committees, obviously they can't even agree on what it is. So I think that we are at the mercy of bureaucracy that we've created. We're trapped in our own system to some degree, and it's hard to get out of our own way. In the meantime, these smaller countries like Estonia or Gibraltar, Cayman Islands, which is already kind of a tax haven, Singapore, right? These places are like, bring it on. Like, we will help innovate and we will stay ahead of the curve. And that's their focus, where the U.S. is like, well, we need to wrap our head around this. We're very much a Titanic, and you can't just change the direction of a Titanic very quickly, right? Which is why I think overall deregulation is a good thing if you can streamline the rest of the bureaucracy. For every one regulation you're going to add, you need to remove
another one,
whatever, 2 of them or something, right?
That's what I was talking about, the new administration.
So hopefully, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the next year? I honestly don't think they're going to make any decisions on cryptocurrency from like the White House administration is probably not going to make any type of decisions on one way or the other in the next 2 years. I think it'll be one of these committees or different branches like the SEC or the CFTC that comes in and says, all right, we've defined this and we see things this way, and here's our playbook. Go to town, have fun. We're watching you.
Yeah. And that's kind of one thing that during the relatively recent SEC hearing, there was kind of that recurring theme where they said, okay, we realize there are these ICOs. For the most part, or at least for the time being, we're going to focus on the obvious fraud that's going on. So it's almost like they are kind of holding back, at least for the time being, which I think probably makes the most sense for them at this point, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so another news story that I saw this week, I think we all saw it, was, well, actually, this might have started, about around a week ago or so. Some people who are not familiar with what Mt. Gox is, they were at one point the biggest fiat to crypto exchange, kind of the same way that Coinbase is, except they were based in Japan, and I don't know if they had really that many restrictions on who they were able to buy and sell Bitcoin on their platform. This was back like, I don't know, 2012, 2013, kind of that time period. And they had, which was at the time, the biggest hack where essentially all the money got lost. I'm sure it's hundreds of millions of dollars at least. So they've kind of reared their head back up in the news. Actually, it turns out that as part of some sort of judgment related to the liquidation of their, to the hack and the liquidation of their company to try to pay some back to the investors, that they were getting rid of some of their Bitcoin that they did have. It looked like it was something like $400 million worth.
Yeah.
If I'm seeing this right. And some people think that that's one of the reasons that Bitcoin dropped. Really started not plummeting, but dropping pretty darn quickly about a week ago or so. But with as big as cryptocurrency is now, and as big as Bitcoin is now, do you think? I'll start with Jacob. Do you think is that enough? Is $400 million worth enough to trigger a panic or to cause a price decrease?
It's not the volume; it's more of the news headlines. I think.
Right.
I think it definitely might have had an effect. Just because it is a good chunk, but the volume itself isn't a thing. And even though we've had quite a bit of volatility, I've been looking at the longer trend of volatility on Bitcoin. We've actually been going down. Even though we're up for this year, overall we're much lower than if you look at like 2014 in volatility. If you look at the volatility index, pulling it up here. Yeah. So
it's down is the gist of it. It's down compared to,
and it's probably down permanently. As the market grows, we're probably seeing Bitcoin become a more stable currency over time. So these news events, even though they do have the potential right now to push it up or down, it's becoming less and less important over time.
Yeah, and apparently they still have some more Bitcoin saved up. It's kind of sad because from what I understand, the investors, the people who had their money lost, it was Bitcoin that they lost, and they're getting compensated in the equivalent fiat value at the time. So instead of making a bunch of money back, there
were a lot of people mad about that.
Essentially peanuts, right? So Chris, have you read up on this story at all? Or you've probably at least seen the headlines. Mt. Gox rears its ugly head right back up. I'm kind of surprised anyone's getting any money back because I don't really think there's much left.
Aren't the lawyers taking a big cut though?
Oh, I'm sure they are. I think Mark Karpelis actually gets a big cut too, and he was the guy that, he ran the whole car into the ground, so to speak.
So I would say when you have to look at the daily volumes on how much Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is being, recycled or the velocity each day, and if you're looking at a $6 billion a day, is $400 million over the course of a week going to do much? Depends on if it's all on one exchange, right? That's 1%.
Yeah.
Right of the.
Yeah. So it's my understanding, and this is another thing too, and I think this goes to kind of Jacob's point, is I don't think they sold it on an exchange. I think it was like a
over-the-counter market.
Over-the-counter, correct.
Yeah,
so there's a good chance it didn't affect.
Yeah,
or you
400 million definitely went over the counter.
But if you leak that information in Asia, right, then maybe it does, because people don't know that it's not being dumped on public exchanges, and they're like, oh my God, everybody's selling.
Yeah.
Like, I got to get out now too because it's going to crash, and I'll buy back in when it hits 7,500.
Yeah, and I did notice that a lot of people online had some serious issues doing basic math. They see $400 million worth of Bitcoin. They think that 400 million Bitcoins are actually being sold. They're like, oh my God, that sounds like so much. So I think,
million.
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, there's more than exists. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that definitely goes to the point that sometimes investors are a little skittish, so to speak. So I guess I'm not completely surprised at this point that it would go down.
I like the fact that they're making them liquidate their Bitcoin Cash.
Are they
they're
really
doing that as well?
Yeah,
That's funny.
that was part of the article is that they're selling Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash.
But there's all the other forks too, I'd imagine. Yeah. But
well, if they've done their diligence and separated their keys properly, then yeah.
What I'm thinking of
I think
is
all of that should go back to the people until they're whole.
Wouldn't that potentially make the case perpetually open though? Because if you had, let's say, in 10 years, someone makes a fork based on the coins of that block, that all of a sudden those keys would be worth money. You can just like throw money into old keys from legal cases from decades ago or something.
Sounds like a smart contract.
On Bitcoin?
Yeah, rootstock.
Oh yeah. Huh.
So it's live now too. So I mean, I think you could eventually program all those addresses and then have somebody be able to, if a fork happened, I don't know, potentially with a few clicks and some updates, you'd probably be able to import all those, and then everybody would just automatically get paid. So I don't know what the statute of limitations is. It would probably be on the judge if they could even fathom being able to do something like that, and then how much time and energy would it take to do that? But if you set something up where, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen in 2 to 5, 10 years, right? I mean, who knows how long the statute of limitations or how long they want to let something like that go? But if there's a dozen forks of Bitcoin, and it would be nice to get for some of those people to get a residual check of even just $1,000. $1,000 just showed up 4 years later, right? Like, that's pretty cool. We got to think we are, just because we're in such new times that there are things that we haven't thought of yet that we will be able to do in the next 3 to 5 years, and maybe that's one of them, right? Where restitution can be paid through a smart contract based on any type of fork of that, because maybe that's the way for someone to avoid ever having to pay something back. They're just like, we're just going to fork this one and then abandon it and pick up on this new cryptocurrency, basically, because it's a fork. It's not the same thing. Well, that's all bullshit, because we know that it's really the same people doing the same thing. So why not hold them to that standard and make them, have to penny up?
Yeah, I mean, if they did it for Bitcoin Cash, they probably would have to do it for all the others too.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Do you guys think that something like that is still possible? A hack of that magnitude? Like, do you think Coinbase? On one hand, you look at them, you're like, okay, they must have all their ducks in a row. But on the other hand, like, people were probably saying a lot of the same stuff about Mt. Gox. I mean, we do see other types of hacks, but specifically, I guess we even see them with crypto to crypto exchanges, don't we? So with something like a fiat to crypto exchange, I mean, could you see something like that happening? Let's say Coinbase gets hacked. Boom.
Does anyone know how much
50%.
How much Bitcoin Coinbase is actually holding on to? I'm getting terrified by it, because they are doing all these institutional things, and if they get all this investment money, then Bitcoin skyrockets. This is going to be a huge Easter egg, and because there isn't a lot of big players out there holding on to a lot of Bitcoin. Yeah,
there's definitely not. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I think it's a problem. Coinbase is a problem. It is a necessary evil for a lot of people right now, because there are so few ways to go in and out of fiat. And I mean, heed the warning that you might be getting yourself into a mess of trouble based on working with Coinbase. Here's the thing about Coinbase.
Yeah.
When you use what people don't understand is there's different types of exchanges. People who are new to this game go, oh, an exchange is an exchange. Is an exchange, right? But like, we know, and especially Jacob, that there's over the counter, which is you have two ways of kind of doing that. There's the in-person, there's the private, right? Or there's the guys like Coinbase who are offering a spot price and you pay a percentage on that, just flat. It's just that's what it is at that time. Well, what is that? That's a bottleneck, because if the price moves and everybody's trying to buy or sell at the same time, you're not going to be able to get in. Everyone's basically clogging the network of the website, right? Or you just can't get individuals to meet you or whatever the issue is. But things are changing so fast that it becomes a bottleneck, and that's a problem. So the liquidity factor is a huge problem when you're using an over-the-counter exchange. If you go to the next type of a level exchange where we're talking about you still have access to fiat, but then you have access to more traditional trading tools, margins, shorts. You can set limit orders, right? So stop losses, things like that you can do in a regular like Fidelity E-Trade, something so that you can protect some of your volatility. And there's there's a book, right? There's some depth to the market, where you can say, I want to put an order in like $200 or 2% or 15% below market price right now because I think that there's going to be a dip, right? So that's a whole nother type of exchange. And then there's the third type, which is the whole crypto to crypto only exchanges, and decentralized exchanges, where you have to use fiat to buy a cryptocurrency, to then which you can use the cryptocurrency to go into the what I call like the penny stock realm and play with these alternate cryptocurrencies where people are experiencing insane gains and losses, right? So I think what people don't get is that there's a lot of different levels to exchanges, and we're just starting to understand the limitations around each of those.
Is there any like integrated environment? It could even just be like an interface, that sort of synchronizes them between each other. I know, like there isn't any like Coinbase will never throw all those penny stocks on, but
no. But I think what you're starting to see is people who are becoming or looking to build like aggregation platforms to where they will become the institution to where you would like put your money. So, example, I'm the custodian company that's the aggregator. You guys are customers. So you're going to deposit X amount of dollars with me, okay, and then place your trades, but you're going to use our money to place the trade. So we have a pool of money that we're already ready because we're going to wait. We're not going to wait the 5 days for yours to clear. It just goes into the system.
Right.
And then and then you can use our capital to deploy it into the way that you want, right? And you can do it all from like one like user interface. Yeah. Where you can see Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, Huobi. Like you can see international markets, you can see local markets, you can see over-the-counter prices. You can kind of like
in the crypto space, it doesn't seem as synchronized as like more traditional markets.
Oh, it's definitely not. It's because it's still
it's
goes
infant,
back to
right?
I mean, you're the volatility guy.
Yeah.
You know it better than anybody. I mean, market wakes up in one corner of the world, and people are like, for some reason that day, they're freaking out, right? One thing changes, and then it spreads.
But isn't that
like
a huge
wildfire.
loss to the exchanges? I mean, this is getting a little off topic, but I mean, it's a huge loss to the exchanges to have to not be able to synchronize. I mean, because that's money like leaking out to day traders and random guys on the internet.
Okay, so yeah, I think there are a lot of things to look forward to when it comes to exchanges, but that is an area, like you said, Chris, there's a lot of nuances, especially now with decentralized exchanges coming along. I know there are a lot of decentralized exchanges that they're trying to get going. I know, what was it, Bitfinex was going to do something on EOS Finex or something. They had some stupid name for it. But we'll move on. We'll move on to some more, some more fun topics. So.